Okay, we're back in open session to hear if there's anything new about the Distinguished Alumnus Award.
Well, not really. I can just tell you that all of the notices went out via email to all CPS, and then Lisa Soliani sent them out to the media outlets that we typically
I
use.
saw one in the Republican.
Yeah, it did appear. One interesting little note is that I guess one of our local papers is owned by a parent company that's in the New Haven area.
Yeah.
And they actually reached out to us and said that they had seen it through, I guess, the Register. And so they offered to put it out in all of their publications. So we said, why not? Because we may have alums who live on all over the state.
Yeah.
So, right. So it's getting some pretty wide coverage.
Okay, so far so good, thank you.
Yeah.
System-wide focus areas, anything to report there? Any updates?
Just looking forward to having the different school principals and their teams coming to present their data and kind of round out some of those topics.
Delegated 6 board goals. Sharing with the whole board, monitor implementation, district strategic plan, integration, city strategic plan. Once that plan is developed, okay, so that last phrase stops us from having to talk about that. Monitor and support the middle school and high school building committee and allocate resources to the development and implementation of the pathways approach to the secondary curriculum. We talked about 2 new courses tonight. And the referendum passed. And who else has anything else to say about this? Anything? A lot of us go to those
Yeah.
meetings. Anything you need to say? But so far, so good. Definitely so far, so good. That referendum. The idea of having the referendum, cooperation we got from the city and the support we got from the voters, just everything is in place. Overseeing support necessary to educational impact, prolonged distance learning, right? It's ongoing and it's what we've been doing. Nothing specific, though, right? Okay. Website, I'll see social media updates, etc. Anything from the tech people?
Yes, Ally did send something. There it is. Thank you, Cooper. So you can see almost 700 people viewed our Facebook page, 28 new likes. We reached 2357. That's pretty impressive. 665 types of different engagement. And what's that? Oh, Kim. 756 people viewed our latest recruitment poster. Very nice.
Right.
Anyone have any comments or questions? Okay. Tag update.
I think Laura's online.
She's
Laura's
there, yeah.
Laura was there. I saw
I
her.
am here.
Yeah.
Hi, guys.
There we go.
Hi, so right now, the names of the students that met the initial criteria on the COGAT are in the hands of the 2 principals. They are meeting with the teachers to review the remaining criteria, and then we will be able to set up the PPT. So hopefully, Michael and Marianne will get back to me before the end of this week, and then we'll be able to set up PPTs and finally get going. So excited about that.
Questions?
And Laura, may I add to that? We're also getting ready to administer to the 3rd graders come end of March, early April.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep. So yeah, we make sure that we had said originally that we weren't doing the 3rd grade this year because we were just going to have the pilot program at the 4-5 school, but we wanted to do the testing at the end of the 3rd grade year for next year. So when Andrew bought it, he bought the 3rd grade too, so that we can go ahead and get that done whenever whenever OTL feels it's appropriate to do that.
Right, so if I could just add, that way those students will be identified in the spring to start right up in the fall.
Right off the bat.
4th grade, yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No questions?
No.
Okay. Alliance update.
We are having our visit in March. I think he will actually come visit school, so we'll miss next month's sick, but then I can report in April what he thought as he came. And he's very hands-on. His name is Greg Driscoll. It's a new rep. I've talked about him before, and seems very involved and very interested in visiting our schools and getting to know us better. So we're excited about that partnership.
Good.
I think it'll be very meaningful.
Make him watch videos of these of this meeting especially.
There you go. We'll tell them all about it.
Well, it's a good impression. I think you're the good things that are happening.
Exactly.
Questions, comments? Okay. Topics for future meetings. We have enough there, but if anyone want to add anything or
Well,
priorities?
I'm wondering if there's things that could get bumped if it's, I mean, some of these things have been on here for 6 or 7 months.
Right.
So is it, Fiona had posed, I'm just hearing it from even a year ago, if it's within our control, if it's something we could do about it, let's keep it on, prioritize it, but if it's not anything that we can do something with, then let's move it off and try to figure out how to prioritize other things that are coming up.
Well, sometimes it's important to hear about something so you know why you can't do something about it.
Well, the Middletown faculty management issue, wasn't that like a big riot in a meeting or something? Do we need to keep that on our
It was more
agenda?
than that. There was sort of an institutional culture that worked against teachers coming out of administration. And I'm not saying that we have that, we don't have that. But I think it's important to understand that those things can turn around quickly. It's on the bottom. And it'll, however, if it does, you get the, I mean, all it would take would be something to happen for us to want to talk about that.
Okay, I'm just wondering, there's so many things. One thing I'd like to add for topics for future meetings, since we're on that, is the review of exit interviews as they're coming in, whether the data be rolled up or distributed, however you can distribute it without revealing who the individuals are that are actually taking the exit interviews.
Okay, and is that legitimately us? I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just wondering if there's not a better place. Facilitating
if-
improvement wouldn't be a better place. Budget wouldn't be a better place. Policy
No,
wouldn't be a better place either.
no, I've given it some thought.
No, okay.
Makes sense to me as well.
Topics for future, we'll put it on there.
And then discussing, this is another thing, and I think we need to talk about this sooner than later, the admins are gonna be coming and doing report outs from the schools. So there's just enough months left in the school year for us to cover those meetings. So every SIC meeting going forward, this could potentially be the last meeting that we have where we can actually discuss things.
Those reports won't take the whole
Yeah.
meeting, no.
It'll be
We've,
brief.
everyone I've been in has taken 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah, because they're not gonna present their whole improvement plan again. They're just gonna share their student data.
So how long do you think? Because we have so many things on our agenda, and then all these topics for future meetings are gonna get pushed into next year. If those report outs go 20 minutes to 30 minutes.
And we
per
can make it
school.
so it's 10, 15 minutes tops. And we can really gear it toward the 10 minutes.
Well, what are the
Because
type
I
of
Hardly ever
questions?
the problem, the questions afterwards.
Well, which they're legitimate
We're also
questions, so I don't wanna not, I don't wanna,
So they're important, that's what you're saying.
very important,
Yeah.
but I think these other things that are on our agenda are just as important, and I don't wanna see them put off till next year.
See, now we're back to Mrs. Richardson's idea about having extra meetings. Single topic meetings.
So here's,
Well, with
here's.
me-
I'm not opposed to that.
Here's what I'm gonna say. Just, so it's my job and my responsibility. We cannot ask all of central office to attend more meetings when we have budget coming up. We have all the budget subcommittee meetings, all the public forums. You know, they're doing building committee. They're doing tons of meetings for the new project. So I can't, we have to prioritize what we want, because we can't have them working from 6 a.m. till
What
10
about-
at night.
And we
So what
shouldn't be
if we-
meeting without them, I think is the. is the
Right, so
rest of
what,
it.
why couldn't we have, and I know that people want FaceTime, but if getting their presentations emailed to us, is that something that we can talk about? I just,
Kathy has one.
Well, I'm just wondering, would it make sense to put either next month's meeting or the following month? So we could,
March or
February, March or April, and just make that the data meeting and hear all of the reports in one night? Rather than have one for
One every month?
month? And just have that be the only topic, just forego one of our sick meetings. And just do that. I don't know. I mean, because or is that gonna be too, or will it be on data overload?
I don't think there,
Or do
any
the
such thing as
elementary
data
then?
overload, but
Well,
I think
do.
that.
I do.
I know, but I think that's it's a good idea, and it's a possibility.
Or do elementary at one and middle high at the other, split it up.
So we were gonna do March K3 and then April 4, 5, and then May 6 through 12.
Oh,
So
Yeah,
we could
that's pretty much it.
move it up and do K5, March, and then April do 6, 12, or move it all together. We just want to make sure that we have all of the data.
Right.
Okay, well,
You tell me,
brought
it's
the
April,
idea,
better.
we understand,
If we have to do it all at
we
once.
understand that there's sentiment for that, and we'll have a much better idea in a couple of weeks whether or not that's possible.
And maybe not
But then
K-12, but maybe like you, I mean, the way you broke it up, so it makes sense, but even if it was K-5 and then
6, 12.
6-12, I mean, I don't know, I'm just.
We
Because
could
you're
do
right,
it
there's
that
so-
way.
There's
but-
so many, but that's every school.
Well, that's 4, and then 2.
So when we did the middle school, didn't a few of them report out? It wasn't just Brian.
It was more of a team. High school
Yeah, but
did
that
the
was when
same.
we
Okay.
presented,
That was
So
report.
you would just do the report out for the high school, and I'm not trying to cut it back because I love data and I want the information. I just don't want to lose the rest of the year for everything else that we have on the agenda.
Well, at this point, the next month's agenda would include new course proposals and whatever else we have for reports that you're talking about.
Reports.
Well,
Plus
exit
the normal
interviews,
things
are you
that
gonna
take
ask?
time.
Exit,
Oh, right, that'll be
Right.
ready for
That's
them.
right.
Is
Distinguished alumnus.
Distinguished alumnus, right, we will, but those,
That's March 1st, so those things are due March 1st, so our meeting's probably March 2nd, right?
is March 2nd.
Yeah, it is.
And we've announced that we will make the decision in April. So we can receive those in March, bring them home.
Yeah,
and make
right.
the decision in
Right.
April. So that
True.
won't take much time on the agenda.
That's true.
We just usually get our packets
Yep.
that night.
And Sue, last year, we did present the whole school improvement plan, which was more
Right.
extensive than what we'll do this time.
okay. I just don't want, like I said, I want to cut it short. We're gonna get all this information. I know we're gonna have questions. I don't see it getting done in 10 minutes. For each.
The only
I don't
thing is,
see it
it's
happening.
important that the board does receive the data because now we're in budget cycles and then you really want to think about, okay, what worked, what didn't? what do
Right,
need to
we want
tweak? And
time to.
It will make sense it'll be reflected in budget also, so,
Right.
and what my asks are. Or how we're utilizing.
No, I
the
agree.
funds, so
I'm saying I
just
want
helps.
more time to look at that information, to get that information presented to us and not have to cut it short because we have an hour a month to cover everything that's on our plates.
We'll do the best.
You
We'll
don't
do the
have to
best
say it
we
The
again.
last thing.
I get, I know, I
No.
agree with
All
you.
I'm gonna say, I think, like, the committee has to decide what the priorities are and what we want to accomplish, because it's impossible to accomplish all of this stuff, right? So I think you just gotta decide what's important.
Which is why these things stay on the someday we'll talk about it.
Right.
list.
I do think maybe after we get all those reports, however that goes, maybe we could just target every month taking one thing off of this topics for future meetings list and doing something with it, or removing it from the list.
Or
So they're not
removing it
just
from the
chilling there forever, you know?
It's an aspirational list.
They kind of lose their validity. if They just sit there for months and months and months and nothing gets, we don't talk about them and we don't
Well,
do anything
people have
about
re-
it.
People have requested we talk about these, but I suppose we could ask next month. I don't want to talk any longer about it now. We could always just go through everyone here and say, okay. Interesting thought.
That's a good idea.
But I'd rather do it next month than this.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's for topics for
So
future
that's a
meetings.
topic for future. This topic for future meetings.
Makes my head spin.
Like, what do we as a committee want to accomplish? What are our
Right.
primary goals? And what are
the
things that we wanna look
priorities?
at when we have time?
Mhm.
It's more delineating that than it is.
And that's a good problem to have, but there's more that we want to talk about than we have time to talk, rather than, which we've had in some committees before. Comments for the good of the order. Marissa, starting with you. No, you never said. Glenn?
I'll just add one comment from the teachers at the high school, you know, who are working so very hard, but also just, we talked about them most of the time, which is fine. They are super engaged in the whole curriculum process of the rewriting and just find it so valuable. You know, it's a collective ownership of what we're doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
No, I was just gonna say thank you for bringing that information. I know it's gonna help me in the future. Kind of try, I promise I won't get my word, I'm probably still gonna get my words wrong, but I appreciate you breaking it down. And I think kind of just piggybacking on the SIC goals, maybe we should relook at the board goals overall, because some of these we kind of just breeze right through in this meeting. And I wonder if there's a larger focus to be had, if it's the 4th through 6th, you know, those types of things. Maybe we want to readjust these and then help funnel all of our agenda items through that.
Kathy?
I loved the reports. They were great. Thank you. And these units are amazing. I remember the shelves and shelves of binders
Yeah.
that were in my office. And so this is just wonderful. And to Ronnie's point where you say you can look back, that certainly will take away that student responsive. I never learned that last year. Right there for everybody to see. So great job. Thank you so much for all your work on the reports.
So
Thank you very much for the overview and all of your efforts. I love getting that information and it helps us understand better. And I just want to make sure that I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I really want to see exit interviews that are coming out of it. People that really good.
all the way down to Cooper. Comments for the good of the order?
Everyone is doing a great job.
Joanne?
Well, of course, everyone is doing a great job. But I also think that OTL, great job on the curriculum overview, and the curriculum work that's happening in the schools is really exciting. And it's just wonderful to be part of this at this particular time. And the work that we're going to start on the vision of the graduate is very exciting. So.
I'd like to echo all that Joanne said. Thank you.
Thanks for giving us the opportunity to display some of the hard work of the teachers, because that's really where the work is meaningful and going to move the needle.
Okay, thank you. Great meeting.
Yeah, thank you for indulging us. This is the stuff that we really get jazzed about and we really get excited about. So it's nice to share. And thank you to my OTL colleagues for, being wonderful partners in crime and rolling up sleeves and getting it done.
Wonderful meeting. I can't say enough about the team. So proud of them and all the work they're doing at the sites. I really appreciate all of their efforts. But as Maureen said, it's the teachers working with them in the trenches, making it real, making it a document that is alive, and working so hard for our students, making it real and exciting. This is where we live. That's the best part.
Thank you for the presentation, because when you are the one in the trenches writing it, sometimes you get so involved in it, you miss the bigger picture, and to see everything on that website, so exciting to see the whole picture of our kids, the whole student. It's great.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. You live it,
we don't see it, but now we see what is it. So that's very helpful.
Thank you, as always, to everyone for coming and participating. And just to continue on Ellen's thought, the people who wonder what's the value of the central office staff and having a larger rather than a smaller central office staff, this is exactly what we're talking about. And things are happening that could not be happening without the investment in the right people who work hard to do it. So that's all I have to say. And at this point, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Over
Aye.
adjourn. Thank you.
7:35.
I know.
Kathleen and Sue, all in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the minutes with roll call. After Ms. Ferguson should be Mr. Kisco. So approval with that change.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
For any public?
Not that I see.
Okay, discussion and next steps.
I just,
Oh, I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, no, it's okay, but I
So let
read
me read this then.
last month's policy, the proposed policy for cell phones, I read that. So I just wanted to make a comment on that. I find that the kids after school need their phones, use their phones appropriately. I have 60 kids sometimes after school rehearsal in the auditorium, and one day like a kid didn't feel sick, well, call your mom. But they don't have their phones or access to their phones. I can't imagine after school sports and activities without that. I was on the bus. I couldn't imagine being a bus driver if they couldn't listen to music on the phone. That would just not make that an appealing job. And in the cafeteria, I find there are kids who are using their phones appropriately, especially if you have the kids who are eating lunch by themselves. There's this one young man, he does have his phone up and he always puts a picture on there and he draws in his sketch pad. And then if I'm walking by on lunch duty, he goes to put it away. And I just say, I don't see it, because he's being appropriate and he's using it in his lunch and his downtime. I find in the classroom, if I ask a student to put away their phone, they do. I just say, not now, put it away. If they don't, and if it's a kid where it is a behavior problem, administration has always stepped up. We've made a plan for the kid. They have to turn their phone in at the office to a trusted adult, a guidance counselor, a social worker, or their assistant principal, who keeps their phone for the day, and then they get it at the end. So I'm finding the last 2 weeks, I've really been slamming kids on cell phones and listening to music when they're in advisory or working independently. And it has become, it's not my teaching atmosphere that I like. And I don't allow phones. I don't. But having to be so restrictive on them and making it, it's made things a little tense. So I just, when you talk about this policy tonight, just keep those things in mind, that when you get too restrictive, you almost make the situation work. It's like you made more of a problem out of it than it was. And I did have students point out to me, I asked kids how cell phones do have educational benefits, that listening to music has benefits for learning, for if you're suffering from anxiety or any type of problem that can help you in school. There are good things about them as well as the bad. So don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. So I just wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Okay, so next steps, resident, non-resident attendance, shipment policy. This actually comes before the policy committee because we had a parent who said, you know what, I love your schools. We are actually moving, and we are moving during the second semester of my child's senior year. And my child has been here since kindergarten. It's just because we have to move. And when we looked around, we noticed that other districts have policies where they waive the tuition fee for that last semester. I think it's wonderful that we have students who have loved their time here, particularly for seniors, especially when it's credit bearing. It's very, very difficult. I think it's a testament to all the wonderful things that have happened to students throughout their years and that they want to stay in our high school and graduate. So we wanted to bring this forward to the board, and Jessica Ritter wrote us some verbiage that she knows and has seen in other districts. And we put all the transition years in there so the board could decide whether they wanted all of the transition years in there or whether they just wanted to have that 12th grade, that senior year. But just to give you all of that verbiage and then to decide if you wanted to edit it or consider it at all.
I think the lawyer did say that other districts, it's common, right, for
Yes,
other districts to do the transition grades.
Yeah,
I think it's.
I've
Great.
researched in other, seen other districts have a more.
So my question
Lengthy.
is, what if there's siblings? Is it only for the high school student or is it
No,
for
it's-
all the siblings that
Oh,
are also in the
transition.
district? Yeah, but if the
they're
siblings are in transition years.
Then maybe
So-
we should,
maybe.
I'm asking, I'm just asking.
Right, and
what her
so
take is
in
on
this
it.
particular case, it is just they're seniors, so they
Right,
didn't,
right.
we didn't have to worry about that.
Okay.
We could ask the attorneys, what do they do? But my guess is that if it's in a different year outside of these transition years, they'd have to pay the tuition
Okay.
or make some
Right,
type of
right.
decision. But seeing as these are pivotal times, it's a transition time. Or if the board so chooses, you could say people who are moving in that last semester or last trimester, you could waive the tuition, regardless of whether it's a transition grade or not. But that's the board's verdict.
Yes.
This should probably be case by case because there might be kids we don't want if we can get rid of. I'm serious, right? There might be kids who haven't shown that they deserve to stay here longer than they have to. And that wouldn't be very
So-
many kids, by the way. I'm not suggesting that
Sure.
would be any large number of them. But sometimes you want to be able to say no, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and we could put that verbiage in here and we could say superintendent or designee has the right of refusal.
Yeah.
That they have to petition.
it says
It
that
says with
anyway.
approval from the
It's-
superintendent.
It's in there.
But I don't know that there's is there superintendent? So it does say failure to notify approval. Yeah, superintendent must be notified, approval must be granted. We could develop a form where they'd have to request. But I'd just like to know first what the board wants just overall, and then we could say no.
And as for the kids at other grade levels, the marginal cost of having a kid in a school is absolutely nothing. The cost is the first kid. The
Right.
kids you have to build a school for and buy the oil for and hire the teachers for. The 13th kid in a class doesn't cost more than the 12th kid did. But there might be times when you would run into contractual issues on class size, for instance, or on just plain logistic problem. You know, we can't have another kid in that second grade. You know, we can't let this kid. Now, if the kid is there already, that's unlikely, but sometimes it works better than others.
Well, and I guess the transition years for us may not be the transition years for somebody else.
Sure.
I guess that would be my only, I mean, I see it for the high school senior or maybe the 8th grader. But I mean, 3rd grade may not be I don't,
Yeah, I was worried about 3rd and 5th because the grades are gonna change in a couple of years
Right.
anyways. So we've caught a couple of these things over the last couple of years where it's not correct anymore because it's gonna be 6th grade. so.
We just wanted to put the grant scope out there, and then you can decide how you want to pare it down.
Does this affect this year?
That's why we're bringing it to the board. This request is for this year.
Okay, but we wouldn't have to decide at this meeting, we could decide it in March.
You could still. Correct.
February, our full board meeting in February, right?
Right, you
with the
have
full
time.
board, yeah.
So if
Well, okay.
make a decision and bring it to the full board in February, obviously that's best case scenario. They're still, they have not sold their house yet, but in
I've
this
looked at it.
market, you know,
Right.
they could.
I've
So,
looked at a couple other policies, and it's not as specific as fifth, eighth, third, but there's New Canaan, which was sent to me, and Naugatuck. And I think it would be nice if we could look at those and then decide. Or does it need to be right now, and then we can,
no, I think we can wait a month. You certainly don't
Okay.
want to jump on a policy for one case.
Right.
But I think time is of the essence, but the board would have to decide when and what they'd like to do.
Fiona?
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question?
Who is?
Laura.
It's me.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, still here. So the transportation, we would not be transporting, correct?
That's correct.
No, correct.
Okay, because that would be a huge issue right now. You know, plus, I just think, you know, out of district, like how far are we transporting kids? I will say that I think it will be difficult as far as siblings go, because I get a lot of that now. Even as far as if a special ed student is able to be on, let's say, special transportation, or the family wants all of them on the special transportation. So I think that if you're going to do this, you really have to be really particular and maybe have Jessica really look at exactly how things are worded, because I think that it can open up a can of worms. I think it's lovely, and I think that if a student is in that last year and has been with us forever, that's great. But I think we just have to really be very, you know, I don't know, draw the line, and this is what it would look like. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Laura. Fiona?
So I really like the New Canaan policy because I think this is specific, you know, looking at it for this one student, but we also have to get better, tighter controls over people that are here that shouldn't be here. So if we're gonna consider this, I mean, I'd like to see us just do it for seniors, because we also have a transient population that I think that's gonna be really complicated of them coming and going, and, you know, staying, and they, it's complicated. So I would like to see us maybe just look at it for seniors, and then add to this policy a lot of the components that are clearer about what happens if you're here illegally in Torrington, going to Torrington Public Schools.
So we take out where it says transition years.
And that's just my opinion.
I
Like
agree.
a senior is different than every other
I
grade.
agree.
Every other grade, you know, if you're moving, you're moving.
And I think also because our class sizes have gotten larger over the last several years, that's something to take into account as well. And honestly, I mean, a true story, I had a 5th grader here one year whose family moved. And they wanted the child to stay, and the superintendent at that time said, well, if they can pay tuition. And the child was going to a school where the last year was not 5th grade, it was a K-6 school. And it was the best decision for him to actually leave that last semester and go to the new school and make new friends before the summer came, and he was going back to that school anyway. So I think every situation here is very different. So I agree with you. I think high school is, you know, that everybody's leaving high school and going on to new opportunities, whereas I don't believe the transition grades are as important.
I think you could put this exception does not apply to siblings. It's specifically for
Right.
the high school senior.
Right.
On track to graduate.
Exactly. On track to graduate, right?
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
That's in a couple of
Yeah.
policies that I looked at also, Jess.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be fine with us moving this forward tonight. Again, I was thinking the same thing that you were about the 12th graders. So I think that's a very compelling reason. Anybody else, I mean, you have the option for the tuition. If that's not an option for you, then obviously not going to afford that, but we can't control every situation. You know, I would change it in that first sentence to at the discretion of the superintendent versus with approval from the superintendent, because then the next sentence, it mentions the approval. But that puts the discretionary aspect of it earlier on and kind of makes that a bit more at the forefront, because I do think that's also important. And then we could, like, I like the idea, Fiona, what you said about including other things about enrollment, people that are enrolling that are not living in the district, and then kind of flesh this out further in the future too.
Yeah.
I agree.
So is this the final semester?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just started.
If you limited it to seniors though, would you need that in there? Or could you just,
That's what I'm thinking. too.
students that have attained senior status with, you know.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
if you're a
there's
senior
wording.
and it's October, do we care if they stay till June, if they meet all the other conditions?
Right,
You
if
know.
you add that on track to graduate,
Yeah.
you should be,
Yeah, that's
Okay.
it.
yeah.
So then you
Oh, So
could probably take
seniors,
that out.
I found the New Canaan one.
Yeah.
The New
You wanna
Canaan policy, right, it's just, there's one very small paragraph that deals with what we're talking about. That's kind of embedded in another.
No, I'm saying for the New Canaan for the future, because I think their policy has a lot of other stuff that's different. than
Yes,
this.
correct.
But that's too much, I think, for us to look at tonight.
Right, this just says what applies is just pupils who are enrolled in the high school and whose parents leave New Canaan after the completion of 11th grade may be considered for continued attendance in the 12th grade for 1 year. Continued attendance is subject to the same conditions mentioned above, which is kind of what's here. Is that what you, Ellen, I think that's what you saw, right?
Yeah, I like a lot of that policy, and I also liked some of what was in the Naugatuck policy.
I found Naugatuck and just sent it.
Oh, thank you. But for right now, if we put seniors in their final transition year, right?
Yeah.
Whose families move outside of the district may, at the discretion of the superintendent, continue to attend the school in which they are currently enrolled for the remainder of that semester.
Provided that the parents provide transportation.
I would add that.
If they're a senior, hopefully they drive it themselves.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Someone
So what are we
other
gonna,
than
are
us.
you gonna put siblings or,
So siblings wouldn't count?
no,
Like devil's advocate here. It was my two kids, one's a senior, one's a sophomore. And we moved. The senior could stay, but the sophomore would have to go to a different school.
right,
Because the
Well, what-
sophomore is gonna have to go to a different school
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah, they're finishing
whereas
out
the
that
senior-
year.
I mean,
Or
that
you
that would
could-
be the reason, that-
Or you pay tuition, right?
or you can pay tuition, yeah. You can tuition your kid in. If you don't live in Torrington.
I think that would be at a future meeting to discuss the policy. Right now, we want to just get it for this senior for this month and then bring it back next month.
Wouldn't we bring it to the full
Cooper,
board
can
for
you pass me
February?
We
Well,
can
then-
bring this to the full
Right,
board for
yeah.
February. Once we
Oh, then
flesh
the
this
rest of
out,
it, gotcha.
then we will revise
go.
it and include other things. We don't have to look at these now.
The other thing is, it might be good to just approve this for just the 12th grade, and then maybe in August or something, look and say, okay, what was the actual real world impact of this change?
Sure.
And is there a need to look at, is the sibling thing a big issue? Or is something, you know, there's some other thing that came up that we now want to incorporate? Give it a few months to see how it goes.
I guess my other question is, why are we writing a policy for one student for just this year? As a board, and I'm just playing devil's advocate. there.
Because
I mean,
Sue's not in much of a position to let a kid come if the kid doesn't live in town
well, right,
without a board policy.
Right.
Right, and I think that it would be good I think this happens a lot where folks leave and the students still come. I
Oh,
want
I
to
agree.
reward the
Oh, I agree.
honesty and really have a policy that backs us up and there is a procedure. And so I think it's wonderful that somebody's reaching out and thanking us for the great education. And can my student stay legitimately? Because then otherwise it becomes a legal issue. Because we can't have people, as you know, just showing up and they're not in our district anymore. So I do think we need a policy. And a lot of districts, as you're seeing, have this policy. So I think we would be remiss if we didn't have a policy. So it's maybe the one student brought it to light, but I think it's important that we have this policy anyway. That's
So I think the issue with the siblings is where would it end?
Right.
You know, like, so then would that younger sibling who's maybe in third grade get to stay till their senior year? You know, each student has their own set of costs, you know what I mean?
Well, and the other thing too is that sometimes it's good for students to get into their new school, especially if they're going to be going back to that school the following year. I feel like it's an opportunity for them to make new connections, make new friends before the school year ends.
Break the ice a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I just found that sometimes was a lot easier on kids because they do have the opportunity to forge some new friendships and meet some new people before they're in their new home, in a new town, with the whole long summer in front of them, where they don't really know anybody.
I was thinking that about an 8th grade kid in March of his 8th grade year, you know, moving to, you know, Harwinton, and all of a sudden for 3 months, they're gonna have to go to a, you know, different school. You know, I'd like it would be great if it was loose enough to, you know, because that's a problem.
Discretionary.
Yeah, it's discretionary enough that in an odd case like that, which is probably very, very odd, it could be accommodated. Just thinking about my own kid, how awful it would have been to send her to some other middle school for 2 months and miss all that. You know, just in our school, the Washington DC, we had class night and all those like ending activities, that kind of. It's just my personal opinion.
How much is tuition for people that would want to, let's say, I want to stay, what is it like, is it per month or?
Right, it's about 16,000.
16, yeah.
It's
How
almost
much?
16,000.
16,000.
16
year.
for the year.
For the year, yes,
So
for
it
the
was
whole
like
year,
per
so you
month.
prorate it, but
Maybe up to
even
1,600.
8,000 is a lot for people.
Yeah.
Right? If
Yeah.
it's half the year.
That's a very.
And
Private schools are less than that.
I would- I-
they're not.
I was
Well,
also
because
thinking-
that's
Some
the per
are,
pupil
Like Holy
cost, right?
Cross and.
Yeah.
So,
And I was
It's
thinking
expensive.
many children who are moving, you know, it's a luxury to pay that money.
Right.
Like some families are moving because
They have to.
they have to because of finances and the extra, you know, $2,000.
for different jobs, I mean, so many things have changed during COVID.
Well, that's where maybe we're doing it in 6 months or whatever, to say, okay, what other situations have cropped up that we're aware of, and we need to look at other things.
Especially since it isn't, if it becomes a new policy, yeah, review.
So then, right now, do we need to just state that it's specific to a senior? Can we say students in their final semester at the discretion of the superintendent?
Started with high school.
So then a senior student in good standing in their final semester. Blah, blah, blah.
On track to graduate, yeah.
That's really what it is.
Right.
They've been here this long, what's it, a couple months?
Right. And there are students who've been here since kindergarten.
Well, I think that's the part where the superintendent would
Yeah,
review and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
decide.
Because I mean, if they came junior year, or
Right. Yeah.
And it also could be the student that was here first through fourth, left, now is coming back in eighth, you know?
Right, exactly. So I think if we can just make it a part of the process.
Yeah, and I do think it's important to put on track to graduate with their class.
right,
Because we don't want this to be.
Right,
right.
right. And the
a
trans,
four-year
It's a very
extension.
specific
Right,
situation that
right,
we were
right.
allowed. we
And-
would be allowed.
Yeah, and transportation is, the last sentence, you know. The board is not responsible for providing transportation to and from,
Or reimbursing.
or reimbursing, right? So,
I think we'd have to
so
keep
are we
that,
okay with this for now? And we'll bring it to the board?
except with those tweaks.
With
that
those
you've
tweaks,
mentioned,
yes. Do you have what they are?
Senior in high school on track to graduate with their class.
Okay, I have a student in good standing on track to graduate with their class.
A senior student, right?
Senior
Because it's a
12th grader.
How about a 12th grade?
12th
student?
grade student.
The 12th grade student in good standing on track to graduate with their class, whose family moves outside the district may, at the discretion of the superintendent, continue to attend school in which they are currently enrolled for the remainder of their final semester.
Provided they, sorry,
Tuition free.
and provided they remain in good academic and behavioral standings. Sorry.
Yeah.
You guys know you're gone.
Okay, so we'll get that, we'll piece that together and then we'll bring it to the full board and then have time to look at it again.
Okay, so to the full board with the modification.
Need to put in here that the tuition is waived?
Yeah.
Yeah, do we have that?
That's
Any
in the we can put that in.
If you look at New Canaan, the verbiage is, you can just
You
plug
like
it right
it?
in.
Okay.
That's a real good one.
Okay.
Okay, student attendance.
So the reason that this is here, I know that we had started trying to do that comparison, right? We were doing series by series and then we kind of got sidetracked because of the cell phone discussion. And we're still, right, immersed in that cell phone discussion. But we have to bring this forward now because as of July 1st of 2021, the state, there's some legislation that passed and it's in the packet. I'm sure you had a chance to see it. Mental health and wellness days. Any student in public school in Connecticut is legally allowed to miss school for the purpose of a mental health and wellness day twice within one school year, non-consecutive days. So that also includes a Friday, Monday, so they can't do a Friday, Monday. And it has to be written into policy. So we included Shipman's attendance policy just to show you how they include it. I don't know, we probably don't have time tonight to go through the policy in its entirety and do what we've been doing, but brought it forward just to show you. And it is grounded in law, it's in statute, so.
Yeah. No, I think that, yeah, I saw that. I just had a couple comments and I think it's on Shipman's. Page 2, there's a typo at the bottom of the page, Roman numeral 6. Lack of transportation normally provided by a district should be inserted, district should be inserted there.
But Shipman's policy?
Yeah,
Yeah, we can't fix typos on Shipman's policy.
do we want to let them know? Because it doesn't make this, can some.
Yeah, I can, I'll let
her know.
them
It
know.
just doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense the way it's written.
Normally provided by another.
Where,
Right,
it's on page 2,
2.
and maybe it's our policy,
It's actually
5006.
5006.
Oh, that's our
That's our
policy.
policy.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's a typo.
Okay, where is it?
It's just at the
Page 2
bottom,
at the
just
bottom.
insert district. It's somewhere else too, and it's captured.
down here. No, you're in the. it's
Lack of
page
transportation
two.
normally provided by a district should be
Yeah.
inserted, other than the one the student attends.
Oh,
Okay, we'll change it.
Yeah, it's nothing, it just was hard to understand. And then on page 3, I had a question. Since we're looking at the policy, page 3, the top of the page, C, where it talks about, families or parents returning from combat, should that say that the student shall be granted an additional 10 days? Is that the intent? Or is it sounds like that's what we're trying to do, is give them an additional 10 days for a parent or someone that is returning from or going to be deployed.
yes, it says additional excused absences.
After the word administration, like 2 lines down.
It's
just called
fourth line. Shall be granted. 10 days.
Shall be granted 10 days.
Right, well, no,
Under
that's why I'm asking,
But
should
then
it say,
after that comma, and in the discretion of the administration, additional excused absences. So you're getting your 10, and at the administration discretion, additional ones.
oh, okay, so it's not an additional 10 days on top of the 10 days they're afforded to begin with, or it is?
Yep.
It is, so then it should say granted an additional 10 days of excused absences, right?
Yeah, it doesn't say it's an additional 10 days.
No, that's what I'm asking, is it
Yeah.
or is it not?
Yeah, this is the verbiage that came from the attorney. So,
Okay.
so
I
yeah.
just think, I'm just wondering, it's not clear as to whether they get 20 days or plus more, or they get 10 days plus.
So you're talking about our existing policy,
Yes.
Page 3,
right?
Policy
But I
five.
don't see the, in shipments
Reading it, I
policy.
was-
Right, that's what I was trying to say.
That
Because,
wording.
Giving it-
because our policy is old now,
Right,
and and Shipman has since
But it needs to-
updated.
right.
So,
So if we're gonna decide to use shipments,
I have to do that.
that would,
Because that includes
Does it say
everything in
that?
ours, plus it includes the other
there,
extra
it's not in
verbiage.
shipments at all. That verbiage.
What verbiage?
about the
About
military.
military.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
right. Yeah. So the new Shipman policy is really probably what we should be going for, but I just didn't.
Because that's what's,
Right,
Right.
because that's the most current and up
And
to
they-
date,
current,
right,
right.
and that's what their recommendation is,
Right.
and in their new policy, which is in your packet,
Yeah,
this doesn't even appear
they don't have
anymore.
that.
No,
Okay.
Yes,
so we
right
just,
here on page 4.
the same exact thing? The same
their
exact
what's
language,
in there?
Page 4, C,
Oh, yeah. There you go.
the same language?
page 4, C.
Yeah,
Yes.
yep,
It's there.
yeah.
So they get 10 days and at the administrator's
Then also.
So, no, the
discretion
question,
can
it's-
receive more.
it's not clear as to whether if they get 10 days.
Keep reading, Sue.
Right, 'cause
Additional
it's-
excused absences to visit,
With additional symptoms.
right?
Hold on. Duty. Shall be granted 10 days of excused absence in any school year. This seems different to me. This seems like it's in addition to, but it should say there that it's an additional 10 days on top of the 10 days that
But
they
they're
get.
saying you only get the extra 10 days at the discretion of the administration, and
Right.
additional
Shall be-
excused absences, right? So you've got, we have to go through the whole thing. So they get the 10 excused absences. And then, in the discretion of the administration, additional excused absences to visit such parents or legal guardian with respect to the parent's leave or deployment. So it has to be specific. That's why it becomes at the administrator's discretion. Oh my goodness, this
So-
child may never see their
Right,
parent again,
but-
or won't see them for 2 years or
So
whatever.
we're sure that it's not 20 days, it's 10.
No, it's 20 days.
That's
It
20.
could
They
be
already
20
can do
days
20.
at the
It's
administrator's
just not, it's very
discretion.
ambiguous to me.
I don't think it reads that way.
It is though.
But
I'm
how?
sure it
I
is.
don't think it does
Because
either.
I think she's right.
Because all kids are granted 10 excused
Right,
absences
to begin
anyway.
with.
On page 3, if you look
Right,
on
no, I
page
know.
3.
Right,
saying-
it says,
So
I
that was
get
what-
that, but then where it's here, where it says that they shall be granted 10 days of excused absences in any school year, and in the discretion of the administration, additional excused absences.
So they get their 10 days, like every other child gets 10 days
And
excused.
then they
Yeah.
get this.
And then
10.
if you're a child of a parent who's in the armed service.
You could
right,
get 3 or 4 or 5 more.
You can
Or
get.
up to
some.
10.
Yes.
All right, I just feel like it should say
No.
an additional 10 days in
I
there.
think it's like if, so the policy, right now, they get 10 excused with a written note. They get certain amount of it. After that, it has to be a certain thing, so they could have 10 there. And then if there's more than that, I think they have to kind of appeal to the administration. That's the way I'm reading it.
But I feel like this whole military thing is a different,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think this one means like they can appeal from more, sounds like to me.
Or you really.
for
put
more
the-
than what though?
Do we get
More than
them?
the 20,
For
like say.
more than the 20, but still, to me, it just seems like this could go either way. And maybe they meant it to be ambiguous. I don't know.
It's really bizarre.
It could go, maybe they meant it to be
You
that
know,
way.
we can ask the attorney and we can bring it back next month. We can, I can ask Chip and say, okay, what's the intent?
What's the intent?
Yeah.
I don't want to see a policy where we have to assume
Right,
This
something.
would be an additional 10
yep.
because of military.
Or I think this would be the second.
And possibly more.
So the mental health and
Which is
wellness
clear.
Yeah,
laws,
but
My-
that
my-
part's clear.
My dad is
There's
shipping out of
mental health.
Cincinnati.
Yeah.
We're gonna drive down. to Torrington.
Okay,
So,
so
yeah.
to,
Well,
to
not my dad.
move on, if we keep our policy that we have, add the mental health paragraph,
It's page 6.
and then we will bring back clarification for another meeting.
Yep.
How does that
Totally
sound?
fine.
So they've added it on,
Mental health,
it's
right.
shipments, page 6, the very top, letter B, mental health and wellness days. Which page? Page
Page
6,
six, shipments,
at the very
page
top of
6.
the page.
Where it's letter B.
The first policy is ours and then second. Okay.
So good. I'll catch up. Okay.
And then
And
they
just my
provide the
question-
statute too in the policy, right?
My question there is, how do you, like, so how do you know? Do they have to,
The parent has to call in or.
they can just say it, so.
They're using a
health
mental
again,
health
right.
day.
It has to
So
be
that falls
How
identified.
does it work?
Part 4, section A, 10 parent excuses for 2 of 12. 2 that are designated as mental health days.
2 of them can be designated, correct, and the parent has
So 2 of
to,
the 10?
no,
2 additional.
Two additional.
2 additional, so are they getting 12?
yes, but those 2 have to be, the parent has to actually say,
Mental health,
mental health and wellness day, yeah.
so it's 12.
And it does reference the Public Act under the legal references on the last page, so.
Makes it much easier to
Yeah.
just put it out
Of
there.
our current policy, not of shipments of our current.
No, none of this is in our current.
So if we're gonna add just the wellness piece to our current policy, we have to cite the statute at
the end.
At the
Yep.
end,
Yes.
and then we'll revisit this.
The other one.
When we're ready.
How does that sound? We'll
Good.
bring that to the board.
Yep.
Okay, the other just little aside, which will be interesting for all of you to know, is that these mental health and wellness days being sanctioned by the states do count towards chronic absenteeism.
They do?
So they
Huh.
don't count, that makes absolutely no sense.
So it's it's excused.
Why would- why would it?
It's excused, but it
Because
counts towards-
excused absences count.
Still count.
They still
Right.
count towards chronic absenteeism.
Okay.
So maybe that should be noted also when we look at the full policy, so that the parent knows.
Well, when we put it in, we're gonna put it
Right.
in the handbook,
Right.
and then we're gonna have
Yeah.
to clarify, because it's very
Absolutely.
confusing. Oh, yeah,
absolutely.
for sure.
Okay, moving right along.
One other question, Ellen.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Because one other thing a difference I noticed between the 2 policies, and I remember when we put this verbiage in here, because we fought really hard for it, because we felt like there needed to be teeth to the attendance policy, where it talks about the excessive absences will result in loss of credit at the high school level. So we're not looking to, if we keep our existing policy, that would still be in place.
Yes,
Okay.
the whole policy's in place.
And how does the
Just adding
mental health days don't factor into that, obviously? That's still the same.
And then we'll look at it.
When we get back to
Future.
on
Our
track,
policies.
right? Because we're a little bit,
Yeah.
we've been detoured a little bit by.
Okay,
Procedural question.
sure.
So that's effective for this year.
It started, it was effective July 1st. Yeah. We haven't really honestly had
Does anyone
Request.
I'm
use
not sure
it?
anyway, I'm just wondering, once we put it into policy, then everybody's like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't know about
Right,
that.
so I can get 2 more days.
Yeah.
Power School.
Yeah, they're gonna have to have a code for it probably.
So they can't add it, it can't be consecutive, so if there's a holiday, they can't add it to the holiday.
They can
They
one
could.
month.
Well, yeah, they
They
could.
could.
Yeah, they just
That's not a
can't,
school
they
day.
can't take the 2 mental health and wellness days as consecutive.
But can they add it,
They can take a Friday, leading up
If
to a
Monday
weekend.
is-
so Monday's a
Labor
holiday,
Day.
they can take the Friday and the Tuesday.
No,
No,
they can take the Friday,
Or the Tuesday.
right, but not both.
Can't be 2 consecutive full school days.
correct.
Half days don't count.
Well, no, they probably do count.
And you couldn't add it to the first and last day of the vacation. Because those are
Correct, because then that would be consecutive, so you
consecutive
cannot.
school days. Okay.
Yeah, no, Glenn, they can't take I can't imagine anybody would want to take a
No.
half day. Right, but if they want, let's say, they took a Wednesday and then Thursday was the half day, that would count as 2 full school
2
days.
consecutive school.
Yep.
days. Okay.
Yep.
So it can't be 2 consecutive school days.
Mhm.
Pretty straightforward.
But to your point, if they take a half day, that's a full absence. They don't still have another
Yeah.
half day floating around
Correct.
somewhere. Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
On to Policy 5030. Discussed previously, you made those changes that we discussed in this policy?
The 3 tiers are in
Yeah.
there. Everything that we've talked about, Marissa has put in
Yeah.
here.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
right. Right. But that was from January, December and January.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I have a question.
okay, hold on. So now we are looking,
I think the reason this is brought back again is specifically because of cell phones, right? Is that what that's why it came back again?
Well, I think it was that and the repetitive bad behavior. Wasn't it?
And then it came back, we voted on it, and then it came back again. To look at the tiers for the summer.
Just say it's like the numbers. Page.
Top of page 27.
Yeah, there it is.
number 27 on top, page 8.
Shipments or ours?
It's ours.
Oh, I'm in the wrong policy, sorry.
5030, policy 5030. So where are the tiers, Sue?
Well, those,
They didn't go
they didn't go through. Those were still just you, right? Those,
We didn't vote.
they weren't approved, voted on, or that's still,
That's still coming with the policy, we're just,
right, we didn't add that to the policy. We have that language. But, and I think we can even project it if you want us to, but that, you guys didn't vote to move that into policy.
So this is just the existing policy, not a draft of additions.
Correct. Correct. That's how it was left at the last meeting.
Yep.
Right.
Mhm.
So the tiers were the first offense, the student gets the phone back at the end of the day. Second offense, the parent picks up. The third offense, the phone stays till June. And then we had some verbiage.
Can you send
On
it to Cooper,
27.
Marissa?
If she,
Right.
she has it down.
Yeah, Marissa has it, and she's gonna send it to Cooper.
And do you have the
That's-
revision of number 27 too? Because it leads up to those 3 tiers. So 27 is any,
I thought I read that in our
right,
packet
that one,
today.
any use of cell phones?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
that one.
hold on one second,
That'd be great.
Fiona.
My question is, should we post postpone this until we make a decision
On
on
the Yonders.
Yonder, because I think the policy would be different depending on if you go with the Yonder pouches or you don't go with the Yonder pouches. I think it looks very different, and I'm just thinking it's maybe.
I think that's actually where we left it at the last
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
We're
And
kind of
what
in
would be
limbo.
different if they're caught using a cell phone when they're not supposed to, whether they have a Yonder or whatever, or not?
So I think part of it was the problem of compliance and whether it could actually be facilitated at the buildings was the
Because-
original discussion.
Right, because the
Okay,
language
I don't
was
know, I wasn't
at the
here then.
discretion of the
Yeah.
teacher.
And I mean, some of the information we heard yesterday, right, from the Yonder people is that they don't necessarily recommend those 3 strikes and you're out kind of language, right?
Well, they did after the first week, that
Right.
there had to be like a transitional period
Right.
for everyone to get used to it, like the first week. And then after the first week, this is your last chances and then this is what's gonna happen. But- So we've had a lot of calls with Yonder. The administration got on a call too, and Ellen and John, and just to kind of like discuss all of the different components, but if you end up going with the Yonder pouches, the policies are really specific because it has to address if they damage it, you know. And so they'll give us a bunch of samples to look at, but it's very much more specific than our policy would be.
So
if
they
we
pretty
weren't
much wrote
using
it.
them. Well, then you customize it to your own policy, but there's lots of things that would be in it that you won't have in your policy if you're not using those. So I think that's, you know, we started to look and read through some of the other policies. And they're very different. So you could either, I mean, to me, it just seems, I think the board's gonna make a decision in the next month or so, once they have all the information on if we're gonna go with those or not. So it seemed to me kind of weird to like spend a lot of time vetting this out if we're possibly gonna change it next month anyways.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, because once we change it, you have to go through the whole process of notifying the staff and notifying the families, and then you just have to do all that again.
I mean, that's just my thought.
When do you, Fiona, when do you think the board is going to have a decision-making conversation about that? Based on
February.
February? Will we receive information about it prior to the meeting?
Yeah, that's what we're getting. So Ellen's gonna go on a call next Tuesday and get like a bunch of sample policies. I'll send everybody, well, I'll send it to Marissa, everything we've gotten so far from them, their websites and stuff, but they're also gonna do site visits, which we want to see how that goes, because they'll actually look at our physical sites, dismissals and arrivals, and like time it and work with them. So I think the board needs all of that information, like, you know, is it gonna shorten periods at the end of the day? Can they get them all out? Like, I think we need to have all that information. And that's not something the board can do. It's something that they really need to go to the sites to look at.
Is, I'm assuming that they have experience in this with other schools, bigger schools. Do they ever recommend not implementing it because of perhaps having to shorten a period or people not, the kids not being able to get in and out of the school? They figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
For as long as it takes. You know, they were saying like at one school, it might take 2 weeks, and another school was like 4 weeks or 6 weeks. It just depends.
So one of the schools, they had to stay at 15 days. But they said the biggest thing about the success or failure of this is you have to have a really tight policy and you have to enforce the policy. It's the schools that are not successful are the ones that don't.
Well, what do we do with the teachers that use cell phones in their classes for a purpose? I understand some teachers.
Yeah, so we talked about that. So
So how do you have uniform
Well, because they really,
enforcement if some teachers, well, you can use them in my class and others don't.
they won't be able to. So the
Right.
teachers would not have the unlocking mechanism unless it was like, I'm just gonna use the drones because that's the only one. So there's some classes where you can't do the stuff on the computer. There is no other option but an app on the phone. And Ally is working on getting together a list of what those classes are. So in that case, if it's an approved thing where you have to use the cell phone for the drones program, just as an example, some schools do burner phones in that room that they use for those that the teacher holds. Some people give that teacher a locking device, but those are all details you need to work out, but they should be the minority. It should not be the majority of your classes.
Also, the students that use them for communication devices for special education.
And world language. Well, I think we have to look at all that to see, and I think that's where we kind of left it. They were gonna look to get a list of what those were. Is there an alternative?
Because, I mean, if you're looking, this was not my initial question. I was just gonna comment to Glenn. I'm not sure if it was, maybe Marissa, you could send Glenn the, did we get a link to Yonder or that came from Gary?
No, we got one.
I heard it on the radio earlier or end of last week and
Oh,
I
okay.
There's
Googled
a
it, and I checked it
video.
out.
All right, yeah, there's a
The
video to
video's
watch.
really
It's
good.
it's really interesting
Yeah.
to
What
follow
do we do
it.
now? What do they do now? I understand, you know, for my kids, if they have a board on the wall, and if the teachers want them to during tests, they put them in the pouches.
Depends on the class.
Right,
Okay,
each teacher has a
so
different,
if we need uniform enforcement, why don't we enforce what we currently have uniformly?
We could talk about that all night.
Yeah.
We've talked about that.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm a new guy.
No, I know,
Little
I get it,
ignorant.
I know. It's a legitimate question.
as the
But it's-
policy
That's the
now
other option.
stands, is it's at the teacher's discretion if they use it for educational purposes.
Okay, so is it a kid's problem or the teacher's problem right now who's not enforcing it, which is allowing the students to rebel and say, well, this teacher lets me do it and you don't, and the kids get mad.
So
If we
therefore,
have
we need
uniform
something that's,
enforcement, you lead by example. If all
So-
the teachers enforced it, it works during tests. Why doesn't it work the other 4 days of the week?
that's why we need something uniform that's, has teeth and can be enforced.
So after Laura mentioned the special ed part, would that apply, and this is probably going over what we were gonna talk about, but would that apply? So we have instances, we have some special ed kids that are behavior problems that are not using it for communication purposes to talk. Would those kids fall under the category of being allowed to have a phone?
We'd have to flesh that out,
Okay.
administrate the site, different sites. or-
Right, we'd have to see what's in their IEP.
Right.
And it
And
doesn't
what's
mean.
So
that-
they could have an
it doesn't-
IEP
well, it
that says
doesn't
they
mean
could
that
have a
they would
cell phone.
have their phone. I get
Huh?
that. It doesn't mean that they would have their.
Their
phone.
phone,
Right.
but
They could
a
have, like-
means of communication, whether it be a burner phone or that doesn't have the social media apps on it and things like that.
I think we'd have to. Laura's office would have to look at
Right,
what those individual
right.
programs are, if they can be done on the Chromebook, if they.
Or an iPad
iPad.
or what
She
have
seemed
you.
to, I thought she indicated that a lot of things would be redundant with an iPad if you have the iPad.
Right.
Right,
Kids can
right.
do most of it.
As part of it too, Glenn, just in the original discussion was the constant descriptions in the class of the going back and forth about the phones. And I think it's different depending on the grade level, you know. You didn't feel that it was as bad at the middle school.
I feel like, honestly, when I tell a kid to put the phone away, they do. I feel like it's a very, honestly, I don't find it to be the biggest problem in my life. Like it's really, you know, a couple of times a day, I'm like, hey, come on. And the kids are 99.9%. Yeah, I'm sorry, you know, and I feel some kids almost have like this addictive personality where they check it and put away. And legitimately do feel bad. Sometimes they're, but I don't really find it to be an overwhelming problem in my life, to be honest. And most people, I don't think, like Ronnie's there too. She probably is.
I know, you're right. Sorry, I'm texting parts for the cast. Yeah, I don't think it's as big. They have them, and I will say a concern that used to come up a lot was if a kid has their phone in their pocket, in their back pocket, does the teacher say you have your phone, you're not supposed to have your phone? Because teachers don't want to be looking at the back pocket of a student. Tell you, the phones are big in their skinny jeans. They have their phones. Their phones fall out of their pockets. They have their phones, and if they don't have their phones, they have a watch. I just think the more we try to stop this, it's when a social tsunami. It is just, we're trying to hold back a dam, and I think we need to teach the kids how to do it. Responsible use, like you're not using it now, put it away. We're in class. Teach them when they can and they can't. So it's the same as when we're teaching adults. Some parents can't.
I feel honestly like this is a problem that we brought on ourselves a little bit with not having universal enforcement and expectations. And I've had literally 30 teachers come up to me in the last week and ask me about this. I've had parents call me about it. So like, this is a big issue, and complicated. I think it's more complicated. It's a very complicated issue. Like I've had parents say, there's no way you're getting my phone from a kid. Like, that phone.
We're not gonna take the phones, we're gonna put them in a pouch.
Well, they're
Put 'em in
saying,
their
no,
backpack.
they heard the
Still gonna-
3 strikes thing, and they're like, oh, no, you're not keeping my kid's phone until
Then
you're.
don't.
I've never asked you. to. I don't want your kid's
Right,
phone.
then follow the rules.
I don't follow TikTok. I don't want your kid's phone. That's all it does. But again, I mean, I think most of the teachers, like, I think many teachers, and I don't want to speak out of school, so to speak, is many teachers felt like the line in the sand was moving. And what exactly do we, what exactly is everybody enforcing? And I think uniformly, we didn't do it correctly. And I'm not blaming anybody, I'm not saying so-and-so, it's so-and-so's fault. I
Right.
think there's been several years of how do we handle this? And there wasn't one specific thing that we got where I was like, and I'm not being I'm not trying to be disrespectful or malign anybody. I just think it's been
Inconsistent.
through nobody's
Right,
fault.
exactly. You can't point fingers. That's not what it's about. It's just that it hasn't been enforced. And it's been years.
Right,
Probably
and
7 or 8 years since cell phones became a hot
And I'm
topic
not,
of middle
and I'm not,
school.
and again, like to address an earlier point, I'm not saying this is an administrative or teacher thing I don't think so. I think as much as anything, it's 2 people with classrooms next to each other doing slightly different things because they're not sure what the expectations are.
I know, I'm just thinking, I don't think there's any teacher that would have the kids use the phone when they're teaching.
I don't see, and I've had teachers say flat out to me that they have kids in their class who are disruptions, and when they're on their phone, they're not
They're quiet.
disrupting the class, so they're gonna let them use their phone. So that's,
Mhm.
and that's an outlier, but there's been several that have said that, and, I can't
It's
find
easier.
anything that says there's an educational benefit to that. That's what we've been looking for, and I really cannot find it.
In my room right now, the kids start coming, my day doesn't start officially till 7:45. But I have a room that the kids go to every morning for 25, 30 minutes because there's nowhere else for them to go. So it's like a holding room. So I have 35 to 50 kids in my room every day. And the one saving grace is that they have a phone. So while they're sitting there for 25 minutes before, and typically I'm not in there as a paraprofessional, they're playing with their phones happily. And as soon as I come in, I start the day out. Okay, phones go away. And that's fine. It's not instructional time.
But you also
But they
don't
could
know
be
what
doing
they're
homework at
doing.
that
They
time.
could be bullying other
but they-
kids.
Right.
They could be, but they're not.
If they don't have their
Well, I think
phones and
they
they're
are.
not, right, if they don't have their phones and they're not worried about who's liking their pictures on their morning selfie on Instagram, I think somebody used that example, or what's going on TikTok, today, what's the challenge, then maybe they will do their schoolwork, or maybe they'll communicate with people face to face and actually talk and have a conversation, as opposed to hiding behind their phones and doing what they do. Because it causes problems.
And it's something that has to be taught,
Right, right.
is that there's what you're expected to do, right?
I've also had conversations with students where the students would say the teacher wanted to be on the phone, so they let us be on the phone. So, I mean, it could have been,
Yeah, that could most likely be just such an isolated.
oh, absolutely,
know,
absolutely. I'm
and-
not
and-
saying that that's,
Yeah.
it's just an example and probably
Yeah.
happened once.
Yeah, I think you said mention a sub even, maybe, something, yeah.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to get, because I'm curious, like all the teachers that have talked to you and like you, Ronnie, like what kinds of questions they have, because I wonder if people, like I had a lot of questions that have been answered already just by sitting through meetings, just procedurally how things work and stuff like that. I wonder if we could give teachers an opportunity to like email any questions that they have, so that we could make sure that whatever information we're getting, it answers those questions. Would that be a possibility? And not to
You could.
have
I
that
mean,
influence our decision-making process, but just to see, because they may be thinking of things we're not thinking of too. And it might be good to, I don't know, just a thought.
Do you mean from yonder, Jess? or-
I mean, yeah, teachers have questions like, how would you handle it if X, Y, Z happened? Or things that are making people nervous or unsure about how things would go.
I think we have to first decide as a full board if we want to do the yonder. And then go from there.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. People may bring things up in their questions that make us, could inform
I
our
don't
decision.
think so.
Yeah, I don't know.
Nikki?
Not my.
At this point, are we questioning or talking about the how? Because I feel like that's kind of where we left off, was like, we didn't vote, but we determined that we wanted to change the policy to the 1, 2, 3, and we left it kind of like, you were gonna go meet with the administration and come back to us with some of the concerns. It feels like, again, we're kind of like in this like weird space where we as a board are revisiting the decision, but so I just don't know if we kind of need to make that move forward and then figure out the how. Because we're hearing it again, like I'm hearing tonight, it's not a problem. We've been hearing that it is. I think we as a board feel like it is a distraction.
Right, so we have to decide as a full board whether we want to do the yonder, if that's the path we want to take.
But if we decide
From
not
there-
to, if we say, no, we financially can't afford it. let's
Even
just throw it
from,
out.
even from
Rewrite the
there, we
policy
have to
anyways.
decide what to do with policy.
Yeah.
But first, we have to decide, are we gonna do a yonder or not a yonder, and then do policy.
We just can't keep rehashing
Right.
the reasons why we're doing it, the
Right.
reasons not to do it. Like, I
Right.
feel like that just needs to kind of like, the decision kind of needs to be made on that, and then we can yonder it or not yonder it and figure out that path, but
Yeah.
and if Gary was here, we'd be hashing it even harder.
So I think so from my standpoint, I think it's not good practice for the board to put things into place, policies that can't be followed. And I think that's kind of how they become tied together, is if we feel that it can't be enforced, then you're writing a policy that you know is not going to be followed, and not because of anybody specifically, just if it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. Are they, and I think different schools, different classrooms have different struggles with this. But I can say, I think the board as a whole has already decided that they don't want phones in the schools. Everyone has a one-to-one device now. There's not a reason for them. It's how do you then move forward with that, with a policy that can actually be implemented. Because if you can't implement it,
And be successful
right, then don't even put the policy in place.
enforced, right?
But if yonder has those policies, it might be
Can we, yeah. maybe we
worth
can
us
see.
holding off and seeing what their
Right,
policies
right,
say
yeah.
before we make any major changes or do anything.
I mean, the one thing I can say, and I think, many people who have sat in on expulsions, I mean, I think we can't pretend that it's not a problem because we see it in expulsions.
Every one of them.
There's a lot of stuff that generates, and we're not going to stop that from happening outside of school. but it's also when we're not showing them in school, when we're not addressing it, then they leave the high school and they bring that all into the workplace. So it's a complicated topic. It really is, but.
Even for adults in the workplace.
Right.
And
So
when, to your point, when I met with the administrators, what we really discussed is kind of like, what do we have? What do we need? Like, Robin, like the drone, okay, they might need them. And what about special ed? Okay, they might need that. That's kind of what we discussed. So now it's meeting it with Yonder and looking at the policies that other schools have.
I'm on board
you know,
for all
put
that.
forward, Right.
Just not to rehash it and
No, no,
rehash
no,
it.
right.
again.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I fully,
So then that's our next step.
Can I ask
So-
a question logistically? If you said the board is voting in February?
Are we voting in February to, if we're gonna use the Yonder? Yes.
Okay, and does that also include the actual policy itself?
No.
And, okay.
Oh, no.
because if the board doesn't support going in that direction, then we wouldn't be.
Well, we have
writing
to rewrite the policy anyways.
The
don't we?
policy has to be rewritten.
Right,
no
but
Yeah,
it would
but that's
be
not happening.
different. That's not happening in February.
Okay.
Quick question, in the minutes from last month, we have the verbiage for what was gonna be in there for better work, strike one, strike two, strike three. And then it said nothing will change for this month, which was January. But the admins and Mrs. Honer will meet to discuss the changes.
Right, and we're still discussing.
Okay,
But those meetings happened,
he did, right,
Right.
and,
right?
But-
I mean, we did meet.
Right,
Yeah.
but we're still
Right.
meeting.
Right.
okay. But what was the feeling from the people that you met with? Did they want those first offenses, that language in
We didn't
there?
really discuss that. It was like, if there's no cell phones,
Okay,
what were the ramifications of that for,
so it's like putting the cart before the horse.
right, so we still have.
And some of the
Yeah.
things they brought up, which was interesting, was, so some of the kids already have lost their phones and they have a phone contract, but they can't bring it to school. But then they roll up with 5 or 6 burner
Right,
phones
right.
after they got
So-
the original. So it's a little bit more complicated.
So what do we need to do tonight, I guess is my question, because we're just
Nothing.
nothing, okay.
So 25 minutes ago, we weren't gonna
Okay,
rehash
are we
it,
good?
and that's what we've done.
Can I ask a question?
Not true.
So what we have to do tonight, she just answered that part, one of my questions, but what are we doing next? Like, when we get to our board meeting in February, are you going to provide us with the feedback from all the meetings that you're having? And are we going to get information on Yonder as far as the cost and a sample, like what their
The
policy is?
cost will come to budget. The cost will go to budget next week,
Okay,
just for reference.
okay,
And then at the full board meeting, all of these things should have happened. So we'll possibly even have them come and do a presentation at the board meeting.
okay.
Maybe we'll look at doing something an hour before the board meeting, something,
Okay.
but when everybody
Depends
has
on
all
how
the
it-
information.
Right, yeah.
We
Well,
see,
what
like,
are you-
sample pouches and stuff.
Are you anticipating that this won't happen in February?
What won't happen?
Any of it? It will be on the agenda for budget next week and it'll be on the regular board meeting agenda to have the discussions and move forward.
Vote what we want to,
Okay.
Discussion and action.
right.
And so then if we vote to move forward, then
So a lot actually has to happen once you make that vote, just in full transparency, because the administrators have to take a class. There's multiple sets of parent meetings, student meetings, staff meetings. There's a lot that happens before you say, okay, today's the day.
But that's the
So it
kind of
wouldn't be
information we're
happening, like-
looking for. I think that's what we're
We
trying to
don't have
get.
it
like-
yet.
Okay,
So realistically, it could be the first of the next year.
No, so if we voted on it in February, we could possibly implement
when we return from spring break. And
Oh, okay. Oh.
Good.
Okay.
I definitely wanted to make sure we talk more, but I think I'm understanding it. We're talking more about the steps after the Board of Ed votes on yonder yes, no. Is that correct?
Right,
Okay. Yes.
because the policy will be different if we use yonder or don't use yonder.
Right.
So are you just wondering, Robin, whether or not you need to enforce whatever these steps are right now?
Right,
Pretty much.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm uncomfortable with one in particular.
Well, right now, the policy is as is, and that's what you follow.
And we don't have the tiers right now.
No. Okay. Okay. Moving on. So 5041.
Well, 5041 was really in, like,
to go
bundled
with it.
together with
Okay,
5030.
so 4012,
4012, you had asked to see that last time and we didn't get to it. That was the acceptable use for employees. So essentially that includes, I think somebody had asked about, well, what about adults and their cell phones, right? So that's the last document in the packet.
So I think it was at the December meeting that somebody had asked about our policy and possibly, you know, making some modifications to our employee policy to kind of align with what we're talking about for the students. So our policy that we had was just adopted in 2019, and it really is Shipman's model policy. But for you to consider, the attorney did draft some language to kind of clarify expectations of staff in the classroom. So if you look at the last, the second to last page and the third to the last page, you can see the items in red that are just the small languages, that language that was added. And the board can consider that, or we can just keep our policy the way we have it.
I mean, the teachers get a yonder too.
Somebody actually asked that, yes.
So Shipman has updated their own policy since we adopted this.
Yes.
No, Shipman's policy that is currently there is exactly what our policy is. But
So
our
we're-
attorney added this
Yeah.
language
Right.
because this is what the board had requested, that we look at adding some language to our policy that aligns our policy more to what our expectations for the students are going to be. So our policy currently is Shipman's model policy, but our attorney drafted some language for you to consider. So
Staff.
for staff, yeah.
And what are your thoughts on that?
You may want to wait until.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Wait until,
The other decision.
yes. Okay. Copy. We'll wait.
Yes, absolutely.
Charts for future meetings. Got nothing.
Take some of the stuff from the sick agenda.
Well, do we have to continue to go?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, more
absolutely.
policies, right.
Just everything we discussed. Comments for the good of the order. Cooper. Comments for the good of the order.
I think. You know what I think?
What?
What?
Everybody's doing a great job.
Joanne?
I'll pass. Good, thank you.
No, thanks. That's it.
Oh, good. Thank you, Cooper, for coming tonight. We appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate that. I'm not on policy, so thank you.
John?
Cooper said it all.
Jess?
I'm good.
All set to, motion to adjourn at 8:52.
Some second.
Yes, and Kathy, all in favor?
I
Aye.